Now, would you say that you have chosen this card fairly?
Yes.
It certainly seems that way to me. You first decided black or red, then you decided it would be a diamond, not a heart. You decided it would be even and not odd, and then you decided on.
Yes.
As I said, in this deck, one card reversed. If you see it before I do, please let me know.
I have that. Okay. Hello everybody and welcome to the first episode of season 3 of New York 100. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Because it's a new season, I just want to refresh you on the idea and the origin stories of the series. So my name is Amadeus. I love entrepreneurship. I love business. I love to see people pursue their dreams. And interesting question, interesting backstory. I was approached by someone last night and we got into this conversation of what do we believe is the biggest problem in the world? And I was, things like social injustice, there's climate change. And I said, you know what? I honestly think that the biggest problem in the world is laziness, right? People just being lazy. And I feel as if the best way I can tackle that is by showing you people who are living in their beliefs and doing what they can do to empower themselves. And by empowering themselves, they can help spread that to you. So hopefully that explained that quite well. But I believe in order to tackle laziness, you have to go deep inside yourself, know what you want, and express that into the world. And so hopefully this show is going to introduce you to some people, ideas, and philosophies that's going to motivate you to unlock your greatness. So with that said, I'm so excited to be sitting with the world-renowned magician, and mentalist, Eric. Eric, thank you for coming with us. Appreciate it. And before we get into the interview, I just want to say that this might be a long interview. I really enjoy diving deep. So if there's any particular topics that you want, I will leave links in the description, so like the timestamp, so you can jump right into wherever you want to go and interview. But stay for the full story. It's going to be amazing. We're going to dive very deep today. So first off, I'd like to know, Eric, as a mentalist?
Mentalist, yeah.
I don't even know what that is, but we're gonna get into that later on.
Yep.
So how did you get started in magic? Like, what was the origin stories? How did it all begin for you?
Yeah, I came to magic somewhat later in life. I had a very brief, very sort of shallow interest in magic when I was younger, maybe 6 or 7 years old. I had somehow gotten my hands on a magic kit or something. But it was, when I say brief, I mean it was a matter of weeks that I was interested in it, and then I sort of gave it up in favor of visual arts, sculpture and drawing and that sort of thing, which I had been into before. And then I didn't really think about it. Like, it just never crossed my mind for decades. And then I just happened to be on my bicycle, going by this store called Halloween Adventure on 3rd Avenue. I don't know if you know it, but yeah, so it's mainly a costume and novelty shop. But they had on their marquee, it said, "We have a magic counter." And something, I don't know what, something compelled me to go in and check it out. And that was the turn of the century, New Year's Eve, 1999 into 2000. And so I went in and as I said, very much on a lark, just went in and to check it out. And the guy behind the counter was this amazingly talented sleight of hand artist, a guy named Michael Lee, vastly overqualified to be working at a magic shop even then. But demonstrated a couple of things for me. And it just blew me out of the water. I'd never seen magic performed in real life, and I'd never really seen it much on TV. I just didn't have an interest in watching any of the magic specials that were on TV, because it's on TV, they can do anything, right? But this was happening literally in my hands, and it was just absolutely astonishing. And just at that moment, I fell in love with it, and I just had to know as much as I could about it. And so I said, well, can you please sell me a book for beginners. And I was 30 years old at this point. And he told me, he was like, yeah, this is the book you need. It's Mark Wilson's Cyclopedia of Magic. It's kind of the book that, you would give to a 10-year-old for his birthday. But, I was, that much of a beginner at that point. Like, it was exactly the book I needed. And I remember just like racing home on my bicycle like a kid, because I could not wait to open this book and discover these secrets. And at that point, I wasn't thinking I will make this my career. I wasn't thinking this is going to be a serious hobby for the rest of my life or anything like that. I was just like, I just wanted to know. And so I took it home and dove into it. And by later that night, I was doing my first trick. It was like this silly little rope trick, more of a stunt really. But and it's just been, I've just been completely in love with it ever since then. And so lots and lots of books later, and lectures and yep. Go ahead.
I actually believe that everyone is an actor because they act to be different people depending on different situations, scenarios,
yeah.
Right? So what do you think? I know that's not your career as of now, but going back into being an actor, what's an important, I guess, attribute or trait or skill set that an actor should take on, in their endeavors?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing I ever learned about acting, and it's really one of the most important things that I think anyone can ever learn ever, is how important it is to listen to other people. I mean, the technique that I was taught, the acting technique that I was taught, once I actually studied acting with a real acting teacher here in New York, the late and very talented Bill Esper. So his technique, or the technique that he taught rather, was the Meisner technique, and it was formulated by Sanford Meisner. And it really puts an emphasis on listening, right? So it's not as though so the worst thing you can do as an actor is to have your performance in your head, know exactly what you're going to do, beat by beat, and then go out and do it, and sort of like impose your performance on your acting partner. What you really want to do is listen to the other person and let what they're saying and how they're saying it and everything you're getting from them elicit in you a response, right? And once you stop doing that, you're dead in the water. And it doesn't matter how sort of like big your expressions are, if they're not coming from this place, if they're not happening organically and very much sort of in spite of you, which was a point that Bill used to make a lot, then it's fake, and it's not worth doing. And people have, audiences have a really good nose for that sort of thing, right? They can tell when something isn't happening organically, like isn't happening spontaneously. And so it took, it was like a 2-year intensive program teaching you how to listen, among other things, of course. But the biggest thing is, listen to what the other person is saying, observe them, take them in. Like, you really have to be a sponge, right? As an actor, you want to be a good actor, and let everything flow from that.
So I have a question, because this is actually have this problem. Well, no, I guess it's kind of a problem. Or, yeah, not a problem, but something that I have to deal with. As in, you're doing the eyebrow raise.
Oh, it happens.
No, it's really cool.
I don't know why it happens.
That was really cool. You just kind of like, but yeah, I guess it's like something I have to deal with when I'm preparing for my interviews. So I've kind of went to your background, your website. I've kind of dug everything up on you, and then so I have my list of questions and what I want to ask, because what I think the people want to see versus what you say and how I respond to it.
Sure.
Right? So this is why it's kind of an interesting thing because a lot of people ask me before interviews, hey, what questions are you going to ask?
Sure.
Right? And when they ask me, when they say, hey, what questions are you going to ask? I'm like, no, all you're going to do is just memorize the questions, and if you're not going to have a conversation.
Sure.
But also, my problem is that I'm also facilitating a conversation because I have my questions that I want to ask.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question is, what is the relationship, what is the relationship between preparation and listening? Because you got to prepare. I can't come in just not knowing anything about you, but I also have to listen to. So how do we balance being prepared for the moment and like memorizing your lines as an actor, but also being able to be spontaneous as well? How do you correlate with that?
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly not mutually exclusive. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, as an actor, you do a tremendous amount of preparation, and then you kind of forget about it once you're on stage, right?
Wow.
So it's like you do the homework, you know what things mean to you, right? So you know what, if you're doing a scene with another person, you know what that relationship is, you know what they mean to you and what the words that will come out of their mouth, what those mean to you, right? But a big mistake for a lot of actors is to anticipate what their response is going to be, right? So there's a difference between being prepared for a scene or for a play, and then anticipating how you're going to respond in the moment, right? You have to let the moment happen organically and as I said earlier, in spite of you, and not try to like shoehorn the emotional response that you think would be nice for this moment into a moment that may not bring that out of you, right? So it's very important, of course, to prepare as an actor. Very, very important. And of course, memorizing your lines, very, very important. You owe that to the playwright. You owe it to the director. You owe it to the audience. You owe it to everyone. You owe it to yourself. But yeah, once the preparation is done and it's all, you've steeped yourself in it, you have to let it go and just go out there and let the scene happen.
So you kind of have to ingest, you have to take on lines and ingest it and actually become it.
Really
so
internalize it, yeah.
You have to internalize it, okay.
Yeah.
So you talked about the importance of acting and being in the moment. Yeah. And I've also saw that through your performances. I've watched a few of your performances, and it's everything combined. I can see how the acting comes into the play. I can see how your creative mind comes into play. It's not just a magic show. It's more of a theatrical performance, right? And so how you bring everything together. So, firstly, what would you say is your style of magic? What would you say is your style?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that your experience of it is that it is a theatrical experience and not just a magic show, because that is very much what I always go for. I do more mentalism these days than magic per se, but mentalism is technically a form of magic. But my style, what I aspire to is to come across as someone who is very well versed in all of these things, and someone who knows a lot about it but isn't there to show off that knowledge, right? So someone who's very knowledgeable but who isn't arrogant about it, and is only pedantic about it in a fun, tongue-in-cheek, very self-aware kind of way. So I want to put people at ease. I want them to be confident in my abilities to do what I do and to do it well. But yeah, I really want to excite a sense of wonder and mystery in people. Like that is I think that should be the aim of all the mystery arts, right? Is to get people to feel this sense of, oh my God, how does this happen? Like I have no idea how that could be possible. This thing that I've just seen, it must be some kind of magic.
So how do you prepare for that? Because there's a technical side of the magic and what you do, which we'll get in a moment. But there's also the everything else, the comedy, the Adonis. I remember that video, Adonis. You remember people's names?
Sure,
and,
sure.
You know, the wittiness. So how do you, because you have the technical skill set of the magic, but how do you also prepare or how are you able to bring in those other elements into the show? Was it something that you study for? How do you bring everything together without, obviously no secrets, but how do you train for that?
Yeah, I mean, the preparation is extremely important. I mean, what I want to do when I'm out on stage is to really, really focus on the presentation of things and not be worried one little bit about the technical aspects of things, not be worried one little bit about my lines, my script, right? So to know the script backwards and forwards and to be able to depart from it when the situation calls for it, and then to be able to pick right back up, where I left off. And you can only do that if you have really internalized what you've written.
That's a
There's
recurring theme.
What's that?
Sorry, that's a reoccurring theme.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's very important because I don't ever want to be at a loss for something to say on stage. Like that's, you just look like such an amateur if that's the case, right? So if you're struggling for a line, or if you're, improvising your own script or summarizing it, or, just using some version of it that is not exactly what you wrote, I think people are sensitive to that, right? And I take the writing aspect of the craft very, very seriously. I mean, I do tons and tons of rewrites, and I want everything I say to be clear. I want it to make sense. I want it to be historically accurate, where I'm making references of that kind, and I want it to flow in a certain way, right? I want the words to flow in a certain way, and when I establish that, as I hope to do very early on, and then if I depart from that, it's like hitting a speed bump. It's like, oh, well, there's, he's saying something here that isn't exactly congruent with what he's been saying for the rest of the show. And people notice it, whether they notice it on a subconscious level or on a conscious level. I think they notice it, right? So, yeah, the only solution there is to have it memorized, to know it backwards and forwards, and to be able to recite it, as quickly as you possibly can, as slowly as you possibly can. And as I said, but be able to, go on to little tangents where situations arise, where something, where there's, a person in the audience doing something or a person on stage doing something, and I'm improvising and extemporizing with them. I can always go right from that and back into my script. It's kind of like, there's a magician whose name I forget, but he put it very well. He said, your script should be like your a route that you know really well, right? Like a road trip that you know really well, one that you've taken, dozens and dozens, perhaps hundreds of times, where you can, take a little detour, right? If there's something you need to do, you can go do that. But then you can always get right back onto this familiar route and get right to where you need to go.
That's amazing. That's a great analogy.
Yeah, it's a really, really good analogy. So that's, there's really no substitute for being prepared, for doing the work beforehand, and then just going out there and again, kind of forgetting about it, in the sense of, the situation I don't ever want to be in as a professional is, right beforehand to be like, okay, these are my lines, got to remember my lines. Okay, let me go over that. Okay, and then at this point, when she does this, I will do the little thing. I want all of that to be second nature. I don't want to think about it for a second because it takes me out of the moment. It diverts my attention from what's actually going on in the here and now, right? So it has to be second nature. It has to be something to which I give no conscious thought while I'm on stage, because I want every bit of my attention to be focused on the other person and the situation and the audience and everything that's happening. Because people, when they come to a live performance, they want to have the sense that it's happening this way for the first, last, and only time, right? It's happening exactly this way for the first, last, and only time. Because otherwise, just watch a video, right? And so when you have done that preparation, when you've done all the work to prepare for your performance. You can really just focus your attention on those things that make the performance special, which is the people who are on stage with you, what they're saying, how they're reacting, the people in the audience, how they're reacting. And it really makes it special for the audience to have that experience that will never be repeated in exactly that same way. That's why there's no substitute for a live performance, you know.
So I really like, it relates to a lot. It relates to, again, being one with, well, preparing enough so that you become one with the material, but being confident and comfortable enough to maneuver and detour, but go right back to your script, right, or your material. So I just want to take a step back. In your own words, what is magic?
Yeah, in my own words, what is magic? So magic, of course, is an art form, right? It's a type of performance art in which the magician, which is the performer, attempts to create the illusion of defying the laws of physics, defying the laws of chance, defying the natural laws, right? The laws of nature as we understand them. And to do that in order to excite in his or her audience a sense of wonder, a sense of curiosity, a sense of awe, a sense of mystery. And that's probably the best way to define magic.
And then also, what is mentalism? Because I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, mentalism. So mentalism is a very interesting term because it is not well known among a lot of people outside the realms of magic and mentalism. And in fact, a lot of dictionaries, in fact, I've never been able to find a dictionary that has a definition for the term as it applies to the performance arts. And so I took it upon myself recently to come up with a definition of my own, and it is as follows. So mentalism is a type of magic, it's a form of magic, in which the performer attempts to create the illusion of genuine parapsychological phenomena, such as hypnosis, mind reading, telepathy, etc., right? And so the term parapsychological, of course, also a little bit esoteric.
So, Eric, we've been doing all this talk about magic and what it is, but can we have some sort of demonstration, please?
Oh, I mean, if you insist. Yes, absolutely. Nothing would make me happier. So, you asked earlier, I think it was off camera, but you asked earlier if I have any rituals that I do before a performance. And I do, and one of those is that I take a deck of playing cards.
Okay.
And I shuffle it and shuffle it and shuffle it until I'm sort of in the zone, you know, in the zone with the cards. It's a very meditative practice, actually. Okay. So it's not just, I'm not just mindly shuffling as I'm listening to music. I'm really making a conscious effort to sort of be one with the cards.
Okay.
And so I shuffle the deck and I shuffle the deck and I shuffle the deck. Then I place the deck under the table and I turn my head and I reverse a single card in the deck. And then I cut the deck a few times. And I take the cards and I put them back into the box. So there is one reversed card in the deck. I don't know what it is, and I don't know where it is in the deck, right? Now I have the deck right here. It's been in this box the whole time, and it will remain there. Amadeus, you are going to select a card. But you're not just going to think of a card and then name it, because people do tend to go with the same 3 or 4 cards, Queen of Hearts, Ace of Spades, that sort of thing. Okay. So we're going to do this in the most fair way possible, okay? So you can divide the cards into various groups. You can divide them into black cards and red cards, so the black cards being the clubs and spades, red cards being the hearts and the diamonds. Which of those two would you like? Whichever one you choose is the one that we will use. So would you like this to be a red card or a black card?
Red.
This is a red card, so it's either a heart or a diamond. Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. Would you prefer this to be a heart or a diamond?
Diamond.
A diamond, okay. This card is a diamond. So this can be either a court card, which is to say Jack, Queen, or King, or it can be a number card or an ace, right? So Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or Jack, Queen, King. Which do you prefer?
The number?
Yeah.
Or the
will it be
card?
either a number or will it be a court card?
The number.
You want it to be a number card?
Yes.
Okay, so it's going to be a diamond and it's going to be a number card. Shall it be an odd or an even number?
Even.
An even number. Interesting. Okay. And which of these even numbers would you like?
Do I say the number now?
Yeah, you can just pick a number.
2.
The number 2. This is the 2 of diamonds. Now, would you say that you have chosen this card fairly?
Yes.
It certainly seems that way to me. You first decided black or red, then you decided it would be a diamond, not a heart. You decided it would be even and not odd, and then you decided on 2.
Yes.
As I said, in this deck, 1 card reversed. If you see it before I do, please let me know.
I have that. Okay.
2 of diamonds, yes?
Yes. I kind of knew it. That's the first card I had in my mind.
There
That's
you
the first
go.
card I had in my mind.
There you go. Et voilà. Et voilà. Well done, sir. Well played, well played.
Okay, I'm not gonna ask how you did that, but
Well,
okay.
I wouldn't tell you anyway, so it works out perfectly.
Wow. Okay, so that's really good. And
Fun, right?
so, my goodness, right? I think that's my first time seeing Magic in person.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Or having it done to me. I'll tell you my experience.
Yeah, let's hear it.
As soon as you said card, I thought about a card. I thought the 2 of diamonds. I said, let me just, instinctively. So,
Okay.
did you plant anything on me or the? Okay.
I did not.
Because I just
did not.
instinctively.
I mean, not
said,
that I would admit it if I had, but
And 2 of that, like that's not my favorite number. My favorite number is 9. So that I would have chose 9, but for some reason I chose 2, and it was red. So okay.
there you go. And I'm glad you did. Otherwise, it would have been a quite different trick.
Oh, wow.
Not nearly as impressive.
And then so on your Instagram, you've done some lectures, and your lectures is on the philosophy of magic, right?
The psychology of magic.
Sorry, so it's the psychology of magic.
Yep.
And at first, because I haven't seen lectures, but can you just kind of like break it down, like what, I guess, can you just kind of break down what the psychology of magic is, and now I'll kind of like see how we can work with it.
Yeah, so in my lecture, The Psychology of Magic, what I aim to do is to give the audience, which is a lay audience, so it's not a lecture that I do for other magicians. So it's a lecture that I do for a lay audience, to give them a better understanding of what makes magic work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't reveal any methods or secrets in terms of gimmicks or moves or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I talk about what happens in a person's brain to make magic work, which is the only place where magic works anyway. And so I talk about our cognitive biases that make us think one thing instead of another. I talk about just how very limited our perception of the world is, right? And that's a really big thing, because we tend to think that as long as our vision is fine and our hearing is fine and all of that, we're experiencing the world in some form of completeness, but that's so far from being the case.
I don't want to gloss over that. So when you mean perception, I'm assuming you're not just talking about visually. Is it our limited perception? What is that the origins of? Is that the origins of just our understanding of what we think the world is? Is because we haven't been exposed to much? Is because we don't research? Like, why don't we have, a broader perspective of the world?
Well, number one, we tend to filter all of our current experiences through the prism of our previous experiences, right? So if I, and it's, there's good reason for it. It helps us to survive. But for instance, just a very sort of pedestrian example, is that if you look through a picket fence, right, like a slotted fence that has, some vertical boards, then has spaces between those boards, and you see, let's say, a dog, sort of stationed on the other side. Even though you're only seeing half of the dog, because half of it is covered by the boards, you don't think, well, there's half a dog. You think there's an entire dog behind there, right? And your brain, through a process known as confabulation, sort of pieces together the missing parts of this dog. And we do it with everything. We do it, with what we experience auditorially, with what we experience visually. We're just constantly filling in blanks because it's the only way that we can make sense of the world. There's just too much going on. There's too much stimulus in the world for our meager little brains to process all the time. I mean, it would just, it would be too much of a processing burden on the brain. And so we fill things in. We make, deletions where those are needed, and magicians can exploit these tendencies of the brain. And another thing that I like to talk about in the lectures always blows people's minds, and it blows my mind as well, which is that, like, the whole premise of the lecture starts by saying, actually quote Jim Morrison, or at least he's the person who is attributed, to whom the quote is attributed, and he said, when the doors of perception are open, we experience reality as it really is. It's like, oh, that's very deep. Oh, the doors of perception being open. But, what is it to open the doors of perception, right? Because as human beings, we can see only a very tiny, tiny little bit of the electromagnetic spectrum, right? So, and when I say a very tiny bit, I mean 0.0035%, right? So, whereas we can, experience this tiny, like, incredibly little, just minuscule sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum. There are other animals in the animal kingdom who experience more and different parts of it, right? So, for instance, there are certain types of fish who can see in the ultraviolet spectrum, and they can recognize each other with markings that they have that are invisible to the unaided human eye, right? So, when you or I look at this particular fish, we don't see any markings at all because we don't see in the UV spectrum. But to one another, it's as if they have like big face tattoos. That's how distinct they are from one another. But who's experiencing reality in that moment? I mean, I don't think we can say it's us, but maybe it's not the fish either, right? So it's very much an open question, but a very interesting question. And so, as I said, we tend to think that as long as our vision isn't impeded by a blindfold or some sort of obstacle, that we're seeing everything there is to see, but that's just not the case at all.
So what I get from that is that our brain tends to fill in the blanks, and like you mentioned, it's actually very useful. I guess it's a survival mechanism as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it can be exploited. Well, not exploited, but it can be
exploited is perfectly fine too.
Yeah. Profession sound not so sinister, but okay. So last several minutes, I got how you were the technician, how you approach your craft, how you approach studying, and how do you tackle learning and developing your craft. But I want to know, well, we did get to discover a little bit more about you, about you're not just a magician. You are someone who brings in a full circumference, a full 360 of a theatrical performance. And you have the theatrical side and a very creative side of you. And you also have a very activist, philanthropic side of you as well, that you're very vocal on a lot of issues on your social media, and you have a movement, your own movement as well. And I've actually, I've gone on your Instagram and I see how you are advocating for different people in their movements. And first I want to know, why is it important to not just be the actor or be the magician or to be the X, Y, and Z, but to also be something or somebody that's going to advance humanity and other issues? Why is it important to speak up about different social issues?
Well, I mean, I can't imagine not speaking up about the horrible things that happen in the world. I mean, to be an activist is, and I'm paraphrasing someone whose name I forget, but to be an activist is to have something inside of you that will not tolerate injustice, right? and whatever that is in me, it exists in a big way. I mean, I hate the sight of injustice. I hate the presence of injustice in the world, and whether that injustice is being inflicted upon one of my fellow human beings, or groups of fellow human beings, or non-human animals, it's still an abomination. It's a travesty, and it shouldn't happen. And I feel an obligation to speak up on behalf of those who are being oppressed and who are the victims of injustice and violence, particularly when those beings can't speak for themselves in the case of non-human animals, right? And so they are victimized in ways that are difficult to imagine and that are just absolutely and completely appalling. And someone has to
speak
put
for people who
a
can't
stop
speak
to
up.
it, you know? Someone has to speak up on their behalf, and I happen to be one of those people. I mean, it's, you know, if you look at the footage from slaughterhouses, the footage from factory farms, it's just absolutely appalling. You know, what these innocent and defenseless animals are forced to go through, the way they're forced to live their lives, and how they are killed, the manner in which they're killed, the fact that they're killed at all, is just an enormous tragedy, and it's so unnecessary. And yeah, I feel like being quiet about it is not going to make it go away. And so what voice I have, I'm going to use and will continue to use to shed light upon these issues, and to hopefully compel others to think about their own actions with regard to non-human animals and also, you know, other human beings, and to consider, you know, how their actions affect others.
So what is Vegan Future Now, and how can people get involved or contribute or
So
assist?
Vegan Future Now is I mean, it started as just a website that I started in 2014 because I really wanted to, you know, I wanted to get the message out there about, you know, my own thoughts on the rights of animals and the animal liberation movement, and hopefully compel other people to think about these things, and also to, you know, debunk a lot of the arguments that people make against veganism and animal rights, and really articulate those thoughts and put them out there for, you know, for non-vegans to see, so they can say, oh, well, yes, this bit of nonsense that I've been saying, you know, in defense of killing animals is completely ludicrous, and here are the reasons why. But then also to serve as a resource for vegans and other animal liberation activists, so that they can reference it. So when they're having discussions and conversations with people about these issues, they can have a resource to go to where they have, like, you know, this is like the 25 most common things that people are going to say when they're trying to defend killing animals. And here are the reasons why those things are completely wrong, logically, morally, you name it. Here are the reasons. And so it's apparently been quite a handy little reference for vegans who have conversations with their meat-eating friends. But yeah, the reason for doing it was, as I said, because I wanted to just get this stuff out there. I wanted to speak up on behalf of the animals and hopefully get other people to really think about what's going on with these animals, and to think about not just what it does to the animals, but also what it does to the environment. I mean, animal agriculture is incredibly bad for the environment. It uses more water than any other industry. It is responsible for more climate change than all forms of transportation combined. You know, topsoil erosion, water pollution, you name it. And it's also a social justice issue, because a lot of these, you know, environmental instances of environmental degradation happen in communities of color. I mean, you know, it's invariably the poor who are forced to deal with the worst aspects of environmental damage. It's never the rich. Like, you know, Smithfield isn't dumping, you know, untreated pig manure on Park Avenue, right? And it never will. It's aerosolizing it in poor communities of color in North Carolina, and people are getting very sick, and it's it's just an injustice on many levels. It's a horrible injustice to the animals, an injustice to the earth itself, and it's an injustice to the human occupants of the world. And so, I just want to put this stuff out there and let people know and provide, my own take on things and kind of fill a void that I recognized in the animal rights movement, because a lot of the writing that's out there is from these sort of larger, animal rights movements, PETA, Mercy for Animals, Compassion Over Killing, that sort of, and I love these organizations. They're fantastic. They do amazing work. But for me as a private citizen, I can say things that they can't because, they rely upon donations, and they can't cross a certain line with a lot of their donors, so they have to, toe this particular line. But I can say whatever the fuck I want, and I do.
This is very interesting. What's the name of the website that people can go on and visit?
So it's veganfuturenow.com.
And I'll make sure I leave the link in the description, as well as your website and everything else.
Sure.
But, so I do have a final couple of questions to wrap up. Rapid fire, because I have to go in a bit.
All right.
So, rapid fire, law of attraction or law of action?
Law of action.
Brilliant. Hard work or smart work? Hard work or smart work?
Both. I think both. I mean, you got to do both.
One or another. If you had to choose.
If I had to choose, I would say smart work.
Smart work. Urgency or patience?
I mean, you do need both, actually. It's important to act with urgency because none of us has as much time as we think. I mean, the clock is ticking for all of us, right? So you need to act with urgency. But then you also need to have patience to know that those actions might not bear fruit for a while.
But this is on a scale that one is going to weigh at least 51%. So what would be the
urgency?
Urgency? I'm with you on that one. And then this one is actually not that quick to respond, but I'm going to try anyway. So imagine someone could not see you and they couldn't hear you. How would you describe yourself?
If they couldn't see or hear me, how would I describe myself? My physical appearance or my demeanor?
They couldn't see you, they couldn't hear me. So eyes closed, ears shut.
So I couldn't talk to them, and I couldn't write it. I suppose I would have to just let them touch my face after they'd washed their hands. Because otherwise I'm not sure how to give a description without talking or showing them myself. I would just
that's a tough
do
one.
like a Lionel Richie, what's that video where I think it's Hello, where the woman comes and touches his face and then makes a sculpture of it. I would let them do that as long as they had washed their hands.
And then this is a new one. I've always asked myself this question, but I want to know. What is the biggest flaw that people see in you, but you know as a strength?
The biggest flaw people see in me, but that I know is a strength?
For example, I'm called stubborn all the time, but I know that's my strength.
Right, okay. Good question. I mean, you're saying I have flaws.
I mean, everybody
I'm kidding.
Okay.
I think that I can come across as a bit of a smart ass.
Okay.
And a bit of a know-it-all. But I think it's important to know things. I think knowledge is important. And I think that, even showing off your knowledge from time to time isn't such a bad thing. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's very good because sometimes we're unaware. Sometimes, like you said, with perception, we're not aware of everything. So sometimes having someone else shine light on us or give us education that we otherwise haven't known, it might make us feel uncomfortable. It's like, dang, how do they know so much?
Sure.
But you are sharing your information, so we really appreciate that. I really want to ask that question because yeah, it's crazy how other people perceive things as negative, but it's really positive.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show. I truly
you're very
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Absolutely, Amadeus.
But before I go, would you mind just telling the camera like where people can find you at?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Eric Walton, and you can check me out at my website. That's ericwalton.com. A link will be provided below or beside my head, someplace. There'll be a link to ericwalton.com.
Definitely be a link in the description. If you're looking for a very magical experience, well, I just kind of thought about magical experience, but not just a magic, but an entertainment, educational in a sense as well, then definitely look for Eric. I'll leave all the links in the description. Make sure you subscribe and like this video, and I'll be sure to, come back to the channel and view more. So thank you. Last question I like to ask all of my guests: New York in one word.
New York in one word. Energetic.
Energetic. Thank you guys, and make sure be great. Cheers.